No species survived that planet for long except one. Humanity *, the homecoming signal. The Galactic Council's final probe to Vorth 7 was meant to be a formality, a last scan of the infamous Deathworld, before officially declaring it uninhabitable forever. 12 species had attempted colonization over the past century. All had failed within days, their settlements reduced to twisted metal and scattered bones by the planet's relentless fury. Commander Zephyx of the Altarian fleet monitored the probe's descent through crimson storm clouds that could shred starship hulls. The gravity readings made his scales itch 3 times standard, enough to crush most civilized beings. The atmospheric composition was a cocktail of corrosive gases that would dissolve respiratory systems in minutes. Probe entering final scanning altitude, reported his communications officer, Velter, beginning wide-spectrum sweep for any signs of. The bridge fell silent as a clear, unmistakably organic signal crackled through their speakers. Not distress, not fear, but something far more unsettling: contentment. Home sweet home. The voice was followed by what sounded impossibly like humming, a melody, carried on winds that should have been screaming with deadly fury. Deep in the Thornwood Valley of Vorth 7, Kira Valdez paused her morning routine to wave at the metallic glint passing overhead. At 25, she was third-generation Vorth-born, her great-grandmother among the original terraformers stranded here 7 decades ago. Where her ancestors had struggled, Kira thrived. Her daily run took her along paths that would horrify off-worlders leaping between floating rock formations suspended by magnetic fields, breathing air that sparkled with microscopic crystals that had long ago integrated with her modified lung tissue. Her bones, dense as steel from generations of high gravity, carried her with effortless grace across terrain that crushed visiting equipment. Morning, beautiful, she whispered to the planet, as she did every day. She sprinted home through the razor gardens, dodging crystalline formations that sang in the wind. The settlement of Heaven's Rest sprawled before her, not the sterile domes of failed colonies, but organic structures grown from native materials, shaped by human hands, but enhanced by Vorth 7's unique properties. Her husband, Devon Nakamura, was already awake, tending their greenhouse where impossible hybrids bloomed, earth plants twisted by alien soil into something new and wonderful. Their daughter, 3-year-old Nyx, played in the garden, her laughter ringing out as she chased luminescent butterflies that would be toxic to any other species. The probe's gone quiet, Devon said, not looking up from his work. His enhanced eyes adapted to filter the planet's harsh light, tracked movement in spectrums no baseline human could perceive. Think they'll come back? Kira shrugged, pulling him close for their morning kiss, a ritual unbroken in 5 years of marriage. Let them come, they'll see what we've built. But even as she spoke, Kira felt the familiar tingle in her spine, the bioelectric sensation that all Vorth-born possessed, a sixth sense developed through generations of surviving in a world where ordinary perception meant death. Something was different about today's probe. Something was watching them more carefully. In the council chambers of 3 different worlds, emergency sessions convened. The impossible transmission from Vorth 7 had shattered 70 years of certainty. Humans, the galaxy's newest and most reckless species, had somehow not just survived the ultimate death world, but established what appeared to be a thriving civilization. The implications terrified them. Species after species had tried to tame Vorth 7, drawn by its rich mineral deposits and strategic location. The Kralliks had sent their most advanced terraforming technology. The crystalline Velhai had attempted to merge with the planet's mineral matrix. The bioadaptive Threx had tried to evolve in real time to match the hostile environment. All had died screaming, yet somehow, these soft-skinned mammals with their brief lifespans and primitive technology had turned hell into home. The question that haunted every alien leader was simple and terrifying. What had humanity become in the crucible of Vorth 7? And more importantly, what did they want? The weight of evolution. 3 months after the probe incident, the first diplomatic vessel approached Vorth 7. Captain Tessara of the Hegemony Research Division had volunteered for what most considered a suicide mission, establishing first contact with whatever humanity had become on the Death World. Her ship, Quantum Seeker, bristled with the finest life support technology three civilizations could provide. Even approaching Vorth 7's orbit made her crew nervous, their various forms of skin, scales, and carapaces trembling as gravitational forces tugged at their bodies. Requesting permission to establish orbit, she transmitted, proud that her voice remained steady. The response came within seconds, but from the planet's surface rather than any orbital station. Permission granted. Welcome to Vorth 7. We've been expecting you. On the surface, Dr. Cassius Reed monitored the incoming vessel from Heaven's Rest Communication Center. At 42, he was the settlement's chief geneticist and historian, keeper of the stories that explained how his people had achieved the impossible. His wife, Jade Okafor Reed, worked beside him, her fingers dancing across bioorganic interfaces that pulsed with the planet's own energy. They're terrified, Jade observed, reading the ship's biosignatures through sensors most species didn't know existed. Her empathic abilities, enhanced by decades of planetary adaptation, could taste the aliens' fear from orbit. Poor things probably think we've become monsters. Cassius chuckled, a sound that would have been impossible in the thin atmosphere that had once nearly killed his grandparents. His lungs, like those of all Vorth-born, processed gases that would be instantly lethal to baseline humans. Can you blame them? Look what we've become. He gestured to their daughter, 12-year-old Zara, who was playing in the courtyard below. The girl moved with fluid grace despite gravity that would snap alien bones, her skin shimmering with subcutaneous adaptations that converted harmful radiation into usable energy. She was building something, a sculpture that seemed to grow from the ground itself. Shaped by thought as much as touch, Zara represented the fourth generation, and the changes were accelerating where her great-great-grandparents had struggled to survive, where her grandparents had learned to adapt, and her parents had begun to thrive. Zara was something entirely new. She dreamed in frequencies that matched the planet's electromagnetic field. She could sense changes in weather patterns days in advance. Most remarkably, she seemed to communicate with Vorth 7 itself. "Mama, the visitors are lonely," Zara called up, her voice carrying impossible distances through air that should have absorbed it. "Can we invite them for dinner?" Jade laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Maybe we should start with a simple meeting, little star." Aboard the Quantum Seeker, Captain Tessara received an invitation that defied every protocol in the diplomatic handbook. "Would you like to come down for lunch? We promise not to bite." The captain's three hearts stuttered in rhythm of terror and fascination. Every scan of the planet's surface showed readings that made no sense. The atmospheric conditions hadn't changed. Vorth 7 was still a hellscape that should kill any organic life within minutes. Yet infrared imaging showed not just thriving settlements, but what appeared to be extensive agriculture and even recreational facilities. "Sir," her science officer, Crixtal, reported with barely concealed panic in his translated voice. "The biosignatures from the surface, they're reading as human, but the cellular density is impossible. Their bone structure shows gravitational adaptation that should take millions of years of evolution, and their brain activity." He paused, mandibles clicking nervously. "Their neural patterns are operating at frequencies we've never recorded in any species." Captain Tessara made the decision that would change galactic history. "Prepare a diplomatic shuttle, full environmental suits. If we're going to die, let's at least die learning something new." Below, the Reed family prepared for their guests with the casual efficiency of people who had turned impossibility into routine. Cassius gathered atmospheric regulators, devices bio-grown from planet-native materials that would create a survivable pocket of space for their visitors. Jade prepared a meal using ingredients that existed nowhere else in the galaxy, flavors born from the marriage of Earth crops and alien soil. Zara, meanwhile, sat in meditation pose in their garden, her consciousness extending through root networks and mineral veins deep into the planet's core. She was asking Vorth 7 to be gentle with their guests, to tone down the electromagnetic storms and soften the gravitational fluctuations. The planet, in its own vast way, listened to its adopted daughter as the alien shuttle descended through atmosphere that should have torn it apart, protected by phenomena they couldn't understand. One thing became clear to all involved. This meeting would determine whether humanity remained part of the galactic community or became something that transcended it entirely. Dinner with impossibility, diplomatic shuttle, harmonious intent descended through what should have been a killing field of atmospheric violence. Captain Tessara gripped her command throne as impossible readings flooded her instruments. The radiation levels were dropping, the gravitational shears stabilizing. Even the crushing atmospheric pressure seemed to be adjusting. "This is unprecedented," whispered Dr. Venter, the hegemony's foremost xenobiologist. His eyes tracked readings that defied everything he understood about planetary physics. "It's as if the environment is responding to our presence." On the surface, the Reed family watched their guests approach. Cassius held his wife's hand, feeling the subtle electromagnetic pulses that flowed between them, a form of communication developed over generations of adapting to a world where vocal speech could be dangerous during storm seasons. "Remember," he whispered to Zara, "they're fragile. No sudden movements, no showing off, and definitely no deep planet communion while they're here." Zara nodded solemnly, though her eyes sparkled with curiosity about the alien visitors. At 12, she had never seen anyone who wasn't Vorth adapted. These beings seemed impossibly delicate, requiring artificial shells just to exist in normal atmosphere. The shuttle landed in Heaven's Rest Central Plaza with mechanical precision, its landing stabilizers automatically adjusting to gravitational forces that fluctuated like living heartbeats. The airlock cycled, and humanity's first alien visitors in 70 years stepped onto the Deathworld. Captain Tessara's environmental suit registered atmospheric conditions that should have been instantly lethal. Her 3 hearts hammered as she took her first steps onto soil that had claimed so many species. Yet somehow, the area around the landing site seemed almost hospitable. Still deadly to her kind, but manageable with proper equipment. The family that approached seemed utterly ordinary at first glance to adults and a child, walking with casual confidence across terrain that her geological surveys indicated should be shifting quicksand over molten bedrock. As they drew closer, details emerged that made her scientific training rebel against her senses. Cassius was tall even by human standards, but moved with a fluid grace that suggested bone density far beyond baseline human norms. His skin held a subtle luminescence, and his eyes reflected light like a nocturnal predator's. Jade appeared more delicate, but her movements suggested coiled strength, and patterns beneath her skin shifted like slow aurora. The child, Zara, was perhaps most unsettling. She walked slightly ahead of her parents with complete confidence, and Captain Tessara's suit sensors detected energy readings round the girl that matched the planet's own electromagnetic signature. "Welcome to Vorth 7, Cassius said, his voice somehow carrying clearly through the filtered atmosphere. "I'm Dr. Cassius Reed. This is my wife Jade, and our daughter Zara. We're honored to have you as our guests." "I am Captain Tessara of the Hegemony Research Division," she replied, proud that her translator managed to convey her words clearly. We weren't certain we would find anyone alive here." Jade's laughter was like music, a sound that seemed to harmonize with the planet's ambient frequencies. "Oh, we're very much alive, more alive than we've ever been, actually. Would you like to see our home?" The tour that followed challenged every assumption the galactic community held about survival, adaptation, and the limits of biological possibility. The settlement of Heaven's Rest was not built on Vorth 7, it was grown from it. Structures rose from living rock, shaped by techniques that seemed to blur the line between technology and biology. Gardens flourished where nothing should grow, their plants a hybrid of Earth genetics and alien evolution that created new forms of beauty. "How?" Dr. Venter gasped, his instruments detecting impossible biodiversity. "The radiation levels alone should sterilize any organic matter." "The radiation feeds us," Zara said matter-of-factly, extending her hand toward a flower that glowed with soft bioluminescence. "Grandmama taught us the old songs about being afraid of it, but we learned to dance with it instead." In their home, around a table carved from a single massive crystal that pulsed with warm light, the Reed family served their guests a meal that redefined possibilities. Every dish was simultaneously familiar and alien, recognizable flavors enhanced by the planet's unique mineral content, textures that shouldn't exist, nutrients that seemed to provide energy on multiple biological levels. 70 years ago, Cassius explained, his words measured and careful. Our ancestors were stranded here when their terraforming mission failed. They should have died. Most expected to die, but some of them decided to try a different approach. Instead of changing the planet, Jade continued, they let the planet change them. Captain Tessaro listened with growing fascination and horror as the reeds described generations of adaptation that violated every principle of evolutionary biology. Not gradual change over millennia, but conscious cooperation with environmental pressures that accelerated natural selection into something unprecedented. The children born here weren't quite human anymore, Cassius said quietly. Their children were even further changed. And now, he gestured to Zara, who was absently levitating small objects while she ate. Her attention split between the conversation and some deeper communion with the planet itself. Now we're not sure what we are, Jade finished. Human, but more than human. Children of two worlds, belonging fully to neither. As the meal concluded and Vorth 7's twin moons rose over a landscape that glowed with bioluminescent life, Captain Tessara realized she faced a question that would define the future of galactic civilization. What did you do when humanity evolved beyond humanity itself? And more importantly, what did they want with the rest of the galaxy? The deep communion 3 days into the diplomatic mission, Captain Tessara's reports to the Galactic Council grew increasingly disturbing. What she had initially documented as remarkable adaptation was revealing itself as something far more profound and potentially threatening. Council leaders, she transmitted during her evening briefing, I must revise my earlier assessments. These are not simply adapted humans. The neural activity patterns suggest consciousness operating on quantum levels we don't fully understand. Their integration with the planetary ecosystem appears to be symbiotic at a cellular level. Her words carried across 3 star systems to chambers where the galaxy's most powerful beings debated humanity's fate. The Altarian Empire, the Crystalline Collective, and the Biosynthesis Union had united only once before, when the Devourers had threatened all organic life millennia ago. Now they faced a different kind of existential question on Vorth 7, oblivious to the fear rippling across civilized space. Jade Okafarid was falling in love all over again. Her morning ritual involved deep communion with the planet's root network, a meditation that connected her consciousness to every living thing across continents. But this morning, her awareness touched something unexpected. Her husband's mind, reaching toward hers through the planetary matrix. Their mental connection had developed gradually over 15 years of marriage, but the presence of alien observers seemed to be catalyzing changes they hadn't experienced before. Thoughts flowed between them without words, emotions shared at levels that transcended individual identity. The visitors are afraid, Jade's consciousness whispered to Cassius across the settlement. Their fear tastes like metal and electricity. I know, came his reply, warm with shared understanding. Zara felt it too. She's been trying to calm their ship's biosystems all morning. Their daughter had indeed been busy. 12-year-old Zara sat in the communal garden. Her awareness extended beyond the planet's surface to the orbiting vessel above. She could sense the anxiety of the alien crew, their biological systems stressed by proximity to energies they couldn't understand. So she had begun what she called singing to the scared ones, sending subtle harmonics through space to ease their distress. Dr. Venter, aboard the Quantum Seeker, noticed the change first. Captain, our stress indicators are normalizing. The entire crew is reporting improved psychological states. It's as if something is actively countering the environmental anxiety responses. Captain Tessara felt it, to a strange peace settling over her mind. Fears that had gnawed at her for days suddenly seeming manageable. Source of the effect, unknown. But the harmonic pattern suggests planetary origin, as if Vorth 7 itself is trying to comfort us. On the surface, Cassius was conducting his own experiment in interspecies understanding. As the settlement's historian, He had been tasked with explaining humanity's transformation to their guests. But how did you describe conscious evolution to beings who thought in terms of natural selection spanning millions of years? The first generation called it choosing to dance with hell, he told Captain Tessara as they walked through the sculpture gardens, an area where human creativity had merged with planetary forces to create art that existed in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, they realized they had two choices: fight the planet and die, or find ways to work with it. But the genetic changes, the captain pressed, her suit's sensors recording cellular samples from the very air around them. Natural mutation doesn't work this quickly. Cassius paused beside a fountain that sang in crystalline harmonies, water infused with minerals that created music as they flowed. Natural mutation, no. But what if mutation could be guided? What if consciousness itself could influence genetic expression? The concept terrified every xenobiologist who heard it. Conscious evolution implied that intelligent species could direct their own biological development, a power that could reshape entire civilizations within generations rather than epochs. That evening, as Vorth 7's aurora painted impossible colors across the sky, the Reed family shared their most closely guarded secret with their alien guests. In the depths of their home, carved from living rock that pulsed with bioluminescent veins, lay the chamber of deep communion. "This is where we connect," Jade explained, her voice soft with reverence, "not just with each other, but with everything. The planet, the ecosystem, the quantum fields that bind matter together." The chamber was beautiful and terrible, organic curves that seemed grown rather than built, surfaces that shifted color in response to the emotions of those present. And at the center, a pool of liquid that reflected not images but thoughts. "We discovered it by accident," Cassius added. "The mineral composition creates a natural amplification field for bioelectric consciousness. What started as meditation became something more." Zara stepped forward, her young face serious beyond her years. "Would you like to feel what we feel, just for a moment?" Captain Tessara's 3 hearts stopped beating in unison. The offer was simultaneously the greatest scientific opportunity in galactic history and potentially the most dangerous. If these humans could share consciousness across species barriers, the implications for diplomacy, warfare, and the very nature of individual identity were staggering. Aishi began, then noticed that her fear was again melting away, replaced by curious wonder. Zara's influence, she realized. The child was actively managing her emotional state. Just a touch. Jade promised, nothing forced, nothing permanent. But perhaps understanding begins with feeling what another feels. As Captain Tessara knelt beside the communion pool, her environmental suit registering energy levels that should have been instantly lethal, she realized she was about to become the first alien to experience consciousness as humanity had evolved. To know it, the question was, would she still be herself when it was over? Part 5. The Choice of Worlds. The moment Captain Tessara's consciousness touched the communion pool, reality exploded into impossible dimensions. Her individual awareness, the careful boundaries that define self from other, dissolved into something vast and interconnected. She felt the pulse of Vorth 7's molten core, the whisper of wind across 3 continents, the dreams of sleeping children in settlements she had never seen. But more than that, she felt them, not just the Reed family, but every human consciousness on the planet, their minds linked in a network that spanned the globe. Thousands of individuals who had somehow maintained their unique personalities, while sharing something deeper, a collective wisdom born from 70 years of impossible survival. "Do not fear," came a voice that was somehow all of them and none of them. "We remain ourselves, but we are also more." Through the connection, Captain Tessara experienced memories that weren't her own. She felt the terror of the first stranded terraformers as their equipment failed and their companions died. She experienced the desperate choices that led them to consume local minerals that should have been toxic, to expose themselves to radiation that should have been lethal, to allow the planet to change them rather than fighting uselessly against forces beyond their control. She felt the wonder of parents watching their children adapt in real time, developing new senses and capabilities with each generation. The joy of couples who discovered they could share thoughts, and emotions at levels no other species had achieved. The collective decision to embrace transformation rather than cling to baseline humanity. And underneath it all, she felt the planet itself not alive in any conventional sense, but possessed of its own vast intelligence, its own desire for connection and growth. Vorth 7 had been waiting eons for a species capable of true symbiosis, and humanity had proven worthy partners. The communion lasted only minutes in objective time, but when Captain Tessara's consciousness returned to her own body, she carried with her an understanding that would reshape galactic civilization. "We're not conquerors," she whispered, tears streaming down her face inside her environmental suit. "You're not trying to expand or dominate. You're just living." Jade helped her to unsteady feet, the physical contact maintaining traces of the deeper connection. "We found paradise, Captain, but it's a paradise that only works because we changed to deserve it. We couldn't impose this on others, even if we wanted to." Over the following days, as Captain Tessara prepared her final report, she witnessed the full scope of what humanity had become. Couples like Marcus and River Delacroix, whose love had deepened into literal mental symbiosis. Their twin children, Kai and Luna, who seemed to share a single consciousness distributed across two bodies. The elderly woman, Grandmother Sage, who could predict weather patterns weeks in advance by feeling the planet's electromagnetic fluctuations in her bones. Most remarkably, she met the youngest generation children born just 5 years ago who represented the latest stage of human evolution. They communicated in harmonics that bypassed language entirely, could manipulate matter at the molecular level through focused thought, and seemed to exist partially in quantum states that allowed them to perceive multiple realities simultaneously. "This is just the beginning," young Orion Blackthorn told her, his 8-year-old voice carrying impossible wisdom. "Each generation goes deeper into the partnership. We don't know what we'll become, but we're not afraid to find out." The implications terrified the galactic community. Captain Tessara's reports sparked emergency sessions across a dozen worlds. Here was a human population that had transcended normal biological limitations, developed capabilities that bordered on what some species considered divine, and shown the ability to share consciousness across species barriers. Some council members advocated immediate quarantine containing the Vorth 7 humans before their influence could spread. Others proposed study and potential alliance, seeing opportunities for technological and philosophical advancement. A few suggested more extreme measures, viewing conscious evolution as an existential threat to established galactic order. But as debate raged across civilized space, the humans of Vorth 7 continued their quiet daily lives. Marcus and River worked together in their laboratory, developing new forms of bioarchitecture that could grow habitable structures on previously uninhabitable worlds. Jade and Cassius raised their daughter while documenting the settlement's transformation for future generations. Young Zara played with friends whose games involved reshaping reality through collective imagination. The choice, they knew, would ultimately belong to the galaxy. Humanity had found its path of transformation that turned individual survival into collective transcendence, that made love not just an emotion, but a fundamental force for conscious evolution. When the first formal delegation arrived 6 months later, representatives from 17 different species, they found humans ready to share their discoveries, but unwilling to change what they had become. The negotiations that followed would determine whether humanity remained part of the galactic community as evolutionary pioneers, or stepped beyond it entirely as something unprecedented in the universe's history. Standing in the communion chamber where it all began, surrounded by the family that had shown the galaxy what love could become, when it transcended traditional boundaries, Captain Tessara realized she faced the most important translation of her career. How do you explain to a universe built on separation and individual achievement that true strength might come from the conscious choice to become more than the sum of your parts? The answer, she suspected, would reshape everything they thought they knew about life, consciousness, and the infinite possibilities that emerged when beings chose love over fear, transformation over stagnation, and partnership over dominion. Humanity had survived the Deathworld by becoming something new. Now the galaxy would have to decide if it was ready to evolve alongside them.